Hey guys, welcome back to the shop. So today I'm going to be performing the A service, or the yearly service on the E63, and I bet it'll come surprise to you that's only going to cost me less than 30 bucks. Now I know I've hit on this before and I'll kind of reiterate because it is the point of the channel. There are several reasons why I DIY. One is because I truly just enjoy it. I've been doing it since I was a kid. Two is I have a certain taste in vehicles, and by doing so kind of allows me to have these kind of vehicles that normally a blue collar guy like me would not be able to afford. Three is convenience. The closest dealer is like a day away drive for this. For that, it's maybe an hour away. So even at minimum, just to take it down there to get an oil change would be either a multi-day or at minimum like 6 hour experience. And then lastly, I have a level of standards that I think I can exceed over them. Now, I'm not saying any dealers are bad to work on. Don't hear me say that at all. I'm just saying that when I do it, I have a confidence that I'm getting it done correctly. So without further ado, let's show you how I perform an A service on my E63. Okay guys, two more things before we get started. I know you're like, just stop talking and start working. Okay, the tools real quick. What do you need to do this? Any basic toolkit is enough to do this job, with one exception. You need a 27 millimeter to undo the oil filter cap on top. So congratulations, you got a new tool. Okay, the second thing is, if you're following the instructions to a T, you need to get the engine hot. The instructions say get the water temperature up to 80 C, which is 175 degrees or whatever, before you do this. And the problem with doing that is now everything is searing hot to work on. It's very uncomfortable and you can burn yourself. So think about the logic of why they're doing that. They want it hot, so when somebody comes in, they drove their car to the dealership and they drain it, they want all the oil to drain out very nicely, because hot oil is very, viscous or whatever you call it, and it'll drain out really fast from the high parts of the motor and everything, while cold oil might just like leave oil up in the top of the motor and stuff like that. So they don't want you to start the car, drive around the block to your dealership if you're really close, and then try to do an oil change on car with like 50-degree oil, because a lot of the oil is going to get stuck in random places. You're not going to get a full oil change. So here is a little tip, and some people might disagree with this, but the logic is there if you think it through. The last time I drove this car, the oil was 212 degrees. I shut it off. So all that hot oil all went down to the sump. That's the lowest place the oil's going to go. So the engine is cool now, but it was hot before. So all the oil's down there. When I drain it, I'm going to get every drop out of that oil. And so I'm okay with doing it that way. The only thing you want to avoid is driving a cold oil car and then trying to change the oil on a cold oil car, because then you pumped it to the top. Does that make sense? Anyway, let's go ahead and get started. Obviously opening the hood. One thing I want to show you, like, I know how to open the hood. You can actually do a service opening and push these all the way up. It gives you a ton of room to work. So first thing we're going to do is replace the oil filter element here. This piece just pops right out. You can just set it to the side. Next thing you want to do is remove this. If your car has more than 10 miles on it since new, be careful with this because it will break. It's probably one of the most common replacement parts on this car to go away. Gently unplug it here. The way I do this one is I unclip the top, kind of get it at an angle right here, reach my finger in and push down, and usually that will allow it to release. So it's kind of tricky at first, but it'll come out. So now we've uncovered our oil filter housing. So we're going to be using a 1 1/16 inch socket because I don't have a 27, but this one works perfectly. Now doing this first allows the oil to drain into the sump, because some of it gets locked in here with this on there. It's always a good idea to make sure your area is clean, just so no sand or dirt falls from these pipes or this area back into the car. So it actually says just crack it and leave it. I actually like to totally remove it out. Not sure why you'd leave a dirty filter in there. So the old filter is going to come out. Just going to wipe off any dust on the threads. And then, just so don't get anything in there, I'm going to just temporarily put this back on, and that'll let it all drain out. All right, so here we are underneath the E63. You can do this job just as easily on jack stands. You don't have to have a lift. That's not a requirement. Just get it on jack stands, make sure it's secure so you're safe or whatever. And then we're going to go ahead and remove this panel right here to access the sump. All right, now with that panel removed, we can see the bottom of our engine. This is the sump. Here is your oil level sensor. And so here's your drain plug right here. So we're just going to simply undo it. It's a 13 millimeter. And careful if you did this when your engine's hot, because that oil is going to be really hot as it comes out. So let's see if I can do this out spraying it all over the camera. So expect about 8 to 9 quarts to come out. So make sure your oil pan that you're draining this into is big enough. And I will admit that is one of the longest drain plugs I've ever seen. Here we go. So now we're going to let that go ahead and drain out. I like to let it drain for a couple hours, to be honest. Even if it's cool, whether it's hot or dirt, I'll just wait until the drips are like 30 seconds in between drips, just to get every little drop out. Last thing I want to talk about is while that's draining, the rest of the items that are on the Service A list. According to the manual on Service A, basically everything else is just a checklist, and the only work performed is really a oil change. So if you're doing an oil change, you're getting your Service A done. All right, so while the engine is draining, let me also talk to you about this $30 claim or whatever. So how do I come across that? So I know some guy's going to thumb me down saying, that's because you're using crap oil, man. All right, I don't want to get into an oil debate over what oil is good and bad. There are a lot of good oils, and people are going to argue about that all day on the internet, worse than they do like politics or whatever. Anyway, so nobody's really going to say that Mobil 1 is a bad oil. It is a good oil. It may not be the best, but here's the thing. It's the recommended oil for this. It's the recommended oil for all different kinds of cars. And if you buy this by the quart, they want like $7 a quart. So that makes it quite expensive to put almost 9 quarts in here. Now, if you buy these from, I get them from Walmart or Amazon, they're only like 22, maybe 25 bucks, depending on, the season or whatever. So that comes out to just a little bit less than $50 for the oil. Well, how do we get the $30 number? Every year for the last 8 years, Mobil 1 has put out a rebate on these. That's like either $12 or $15 per jug. So $50 worth of oil minus the $30 worth of rebates means that this oil was only $20 for me. And so that comes out to $2.20 a quart or whatever. So times 8 quarts, 8.5 quarts, you get up to 21. And then I buy the OEM, there's the part number for it, filter from Amazon. This thing's about $7 or $8. So anyway, that comes out to $30 to do an oil change on this. And like I said, they've been doing that rebate for a better part of a decade now. And I do about 50 quarts worth of oil changes. Now, I don't use Mobil 1 on the Ferrari, but I use Mobil 1 on all my other cars. And it just ends up being pretty cheap. One thing that I found interesting about the e63 and this motor in particular is most Mercedes for the last 20 years, they actually have you suck the oil out the top. For some reason, this one, they make you drain out the bottom, which honestly, I've always preferred just the draining over the vacuum ones. So I've let it drain, guys, for about an hour or so. Like, you don't have to, but I just want to get every little last drop out. So it's dripping every like 10 seconds now. So it's time to put the drain plug back in. So we got a new copper crush washer, and we're going to go ahead and reinstall it. Torque spec on this is 30 Newton meters. We're going to go ahead and tighten that down. Make sure you wipe off any oil in the area, just because you don't want to be like, oh crap, I have a leak or whatever. So just make sure oil didn't splash anywhere. Now I can put the splash shield back on. If you see there's hooks on the front here, put the hooks in the hole first, and it makes it a lot easier to hold it in place with one finger. So now it's time to finish up top with the filter. So we're using a Mercedes, genuine man filter. Inside the box, there's also going to be this big O-ring. So the way we're going to do this, I'm going to do this on a clean surface, but I got to film it. We're going to remove this rubber O-ring from here. Just careful not obviously to damage the threads or anything like that. Just going to use this pick. Install the new one. Get a little bit of the oil to kind of make sure that you can screw it on there without any binding. So if you look on this side, there are these clips. Those clips are going to snap into this. It's going to stay in place. And it's simply a matter of sliding it in Make sure it's thread. Sometimes you can go backwards so you feel a click, and then go forward. Now we're just going to tighten this up. Now a lot of cars that have this design, it's usually just hand tight or snug. They put 25 Newton meters on here, which is actually about 18 foot-pounds. So that is fairly snug. And but in the history of all these, I doubt anybody's ever had one leak. So just make it nice and snug. Once you feel it kind of hit the end of the thread, just go a little bit more. So we're in the home stretch. Obviously, put oil in there. We're going to go ahead and snap this guy in there. Goes in a lot easier than it came out. Put back on our cover. So now it's time to put in the oil. We're going to go ahead and start by putting in 8 quarts right off the bat, and then we'll check it just to see where we're at. You don't have to undo this part. I just like to do it just in case I drip any here. I can see and make sure that I don't mess up. So there's always a little bit of sand here. I always think it's interesting. If you drip any oil in here, it doesn't stay in here. It actually has a drain hole where it drains right onto the valve cover. Go figure. All right, take that off. Obviously this funnel's a little bit on the big side, but it works, and you just pour it in there. So there's 5, so we got to do about 3.5 more. Now you never want to overfill oil on a car. The crank can hit it and aerate the oil, which causes high oil temperatures, lower pressure and stuff. So always make sure to be just right at or slightly under the fill mark, and that's always just a good rule of practice. So we're going to go ahead and put in that last half quart. So I think that's perfect. It's just right below the full mark or whatever. So we're going to go ahead and stop there. Put the cap back on. Now the last thing we're going to go and do is take it for a drive and just check the oil level after we're done. So now we're in the car to finish up everything. We just need to reset the service indicator. So what we're going to want to do is turn the car to accessory mode. You want to see the menu that only has your mileage, not any of the other menus. What we're going to do, so now we have just the mileage shown on the dash. Now on the steering wheel there are 2 buttons. You want to push them both at the same time, but this one just slightly first, and hold them down. When you do that just for a few seconds, the special menu will come up. And under here you have vehicle data and your dyno menu and some cool stuff. So what we're going to do is go to the assist menu. And underneath the assist menu, you're going to see 2 things. Service data, which is going to tell you things just like what code is left. So you can see that I have 5,000 miles left, but I'm 5 days overdue. Now we're going to go down to full service. And under full service, you're going to see that there's service 1 and 2. And I'll tell you about that here in just a second. But to go ahead and finish this up, we'll need to go down to confirm service. Hit confirm. Yes, we put in the right oil. Hit yes again. All right, and now we've completed that service. So let me tell you a little bit more about what that service. So if we go back into this menu and click back into it, now you can see that it now tells us what our next service is going to be. So our next service is going to be B5 in 1 year from now and 10,000 miles. That's because we literally just reset it. So you want to know what's going to be in that service. So in the description, what I've attached is a list of what all these are. So as you can see, service 2, 3, 4, and 12. So if you look at that list in the description, you'll see that that is a major basic service, an oil change. I believe that's brake fluid, and then spark plugs. So it won't let me reset it now because obviously it's a year out, but that's just kind of cool. You can go ahead and look up and see exactly what you can do. And this is also in your service manual too. So now that we're sure we got oil in there, we can go ahead and hit the brake pedal and start her up. All right, so guys, I'm gonna go ahead and take this for a drive, come back and just double check the oil when it's hot, and that is how you do the service on a E63.